All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Visual Marketing Show here on Blab, where we come together on most Mondays at 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time to discuss the latest tips, tricks, and trends on visual marketing. Co-hosts and co-creators of the show are myself, Ben Requena, and this guy to my...
Yeah, over here.
Mr. Rob Russo.
Rob Russo. How are we doing today?
Fast.
Yes.
And our special guest today is Wade Harman. Wade Harman has done a lot of cognitive research with his master's in psychology, test studies, etc., that talk a lot about the evolution of the human brain as it pertains to conversation. And basically, Wade says we evolve as the technology evolves, and that's pretty neat, isn't it?
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me on.
That sounds pretty neat, and also kind of mind blown over here. I mean, I get a little bit about some psychology stuff, but when you're talking masters,
hey, Brian Fanzo is the perfect. He is the epitome of what I'm talking about. You know, as technology evolves, we evolve right in it and have new ways to. You've seen the hashtag, the new way to work. This is the new way to communicate, and which is part of the work.
So I don't. I said early on we we're going to keep this particular blab pretty loose. Did we lose Rob? Rob, are you stuck? Looks like we might have lost him as well. For those tuning in and in the comments, Rob is at a restaurant, it looks like, and so his Wi-Fi is going to be a little spotty in and out. But I said early on that this particular blab, this particular interview with Wade, is going to be a little loose, just because I don't know a lot about psychology as it pertains to conversation and social media. I do understand a little bit, and I think Rob would say the same, that we understand a little bit how colors affect psychology and how there are some design principles that can affect psychology. I know visual hierarchy and some visuals like photos of faces and where they're looking is where the viewer tends to look as well. I know those types of principles and things, but I think I'm going to lean heavily on Wade and his expertise to really discuss and carry the weight of the conversation and teach us a lot about how we can use or how we can understand psychology to better our own conversations with our audiences.
Yeah. And, you know, I think every marketer understands and knows that there's this secret sauce that we've got to figure out how to use. And that secret sauce is the psychology. Let me turn myself down. It feels like I'm echoing.
You're good.
That secret sauce is the psychology. And once you understand how people act and how people react, then you've got, you know, that formula to complete your secret sauce. And I was in a conversation the other day with a fellow, and he argued that what I was doing was manipulation. And I think I surprised him a little bit when I agreed with him. And basically, all of this is manipulation. Manipulation is where you do things to get people to do what you want them to do, and marketing is manipulation to a degree. And so, learning to manipulation, it is a heavy word, and I don't agree with the word itself. You guys have some of the best visual that I've ever seen, and there's just been one or two other people that can top you guys. And so you can use that to your advantage and to your benefit to gain the attention of somebody that may not know you yet. And Rob, when I mentioned you on Social Media Examiner, there was a bunch of people emailed me and was like, I really enjoyed that Rob guy, and so you grab their attention with the things that you do or the things that you say in some cases. And it's learning those manipulation triggers that will get people to do what you want. And so the basic ones are, visual. We all know we got to have a good image. Different things like I just lost it, but I think I talked about some trigger words in content, and some of that we already know. Those call to actions, we call them call to actions, but if you get them right, they're trigger words that we respond to. And so those are basically, marketers understand the basics of it. But what I'm doing right now is trying to get down into the guts of the whole subject and really uncover and make it more easy, or easier for people. So that's what I'm trying to do.
You just mentioned that there are some trigger words. I guess that'd be a good place to start on the literal side. I know that Rob and I, we do a lot with visuals, so we'll probably want to hit on what are some things that we could be doing or should be doing or others could be doing with their visuals to spark or to get reaction from our audiences. And I agree with you on the manipulation side. It is manipulation, but I think there's a scale to that, right? Like some of it could be purely accidental, and then others are just a little bit more on purpose, where we know that like we can create a visual hierarchy and get the viewer to read a specific copy in a certain order so that it flows through a story, right? So that's intent, that's on purpose, but that's not meant to be a negative type of manipulation. That's just creating good visual hierarchy. So, manipulation itself feels like a weighted word, right? It feels like a very negative word when you say it, but I know that's not necessarily the intent at all. But I have been on projects in my professional experience where I personally felt like what we were doing was manipulation, especially around data and stats, right? Because you can really twist data and numbers to really tell whatever story you want. And there are some lines where you start to cross and you go, well, the data says this, but when we make it look like this, it's saying something else. And so that gets a real weird gray area. But going back, you mentioned some trigger words. What are some trigger words that would be good, for example, in a call to action?
Okay. These, you can type in trigger words in on Google, and you can get a ton of articles. Copyblogger comes up first, and I've researched all of these. These are generic trigger words that almost everybody can use. It talks about the state of mind of a reader. If you use the word boost, cure, energize, flush, and you can read this. It's on. I'm reading it from Copyblogger right now. Vibrant. There's tons of words, but not everybody is the same, and they have I think it's 50 different words that you can use. So that's a good article to check out. But one of the things that I just tell people is it makes it easier to remember is to remember the 5 W's when you're writing a blog post, and that is who, what, when, where, why. And those 5 W's will allow you to strike some kind of emotional response from the reader or from somebody that doesn't know you. I wrote a post for Jay Baer on Convince and Convert that talked about 5 emotional responses, or the emotional responses. And it talks about those five trigger words. And so when you use these words inside of posts or your social media updates, it can cause people to stop and react. People are reacting to what you're doing right now. And I tell people this all the time, even if it's boredom, you are creating some type of an emotional reaction from people. The only thing you have to understand is it a positive emotional reaction or is it a negative emotional response? And so on that note, you have to find your, and everybody's different. Not everybody is going to be responding to what, and not everybody's going to be responding to the word who. And it depends on the audience at that time. It's just like anything else. There's a lot of testing that needs to be done. But who, what, when, where, and why are great trigger responses. And these they stair step to other emotions. It's almost like a social media psychology funnel. You catch them up here, and by the time you get them down to where you need them to go, you've got the sale or you've got the subscribe, whatever it may need.
So we're talking. Well, you guys were saying manipulation. I thought it was just called marketing, but I think it's maybe your intent. Right? And what you're trying to. Like we had talked before we hit record here. That just came from a big produce trade show, and I'm kind of getting new into the actual. This is new to me. This industry, food industry, but around certain like superfoods or whatever, they have to run everything through like USDA, and they can't say like this berry makes you healthy, or this berry is XYZ. They could say this could be a part of a healthy diet, kind of thing. So there's that. So I guess you've got, depending on your industry and along the food lines, I hate to like crack on anybody, but I'm not a big fan of the golden arches. And you think, we all know, all right, fast food, it's probably not going to, make you skinny and happy. Right. And the commercials that they use, your words we're talking about, and like obviously the visuals, it's always like skinny, happy, good looking people fighting into that big juicy burger. Right. So, I don't know. I don't mean to steer off in a different direction, but again,
well, no, that's a good point. That's a good
visuals
point.
we use.
Some of those advertisements. I remember coming back home from California and seeing a big ad of McDonald's. It was the McDonald's red, and then it had like the Happy Meal eyes and the smiley face, and it said smile. And so they're trying to portray an image of happiness when you eat their food. Even though, I mean, yeah, who doesn't love eating that stuff? But it's only happiness for the first 5 minutes, and then you're like, oh man, kill myself. Why did I eat that?
Yeah, so we have a question here in the comments to you, Wade. If you're familiar with Grant Cardone, do you think he does a good job on the psychology of sales?
I have not read him enough to know a lot about him. So what I've seen of him, I've heard people mention him.
So you were talking about, as a segue, Rob, you mentioned the golden arches, and then Wade talked about the red billboard that was also McDonald's. Maybe we can touch on a little bit on color and psychology and how that can affect people's emotions or their state of mind. What are some good colors? And something, just a preface where we're going to go with this, Wade, I think you said something really smart, which is not everyone reacts the same way to these triggers, whether it's literal or color, visual triggers. And I think that's something to keep in mind. The terms and things that we're probably going to be talking about and continue to talk about are probably generalizations. Would you agree with that, Wade? That they're pretty.
Yeah. No, I would say that's correct. Just like everything else, not everybody responds to the same thing. In some colors, on the most part, people don't respond well to yellow or anything like that. You know what I mean? So, but it just depends on what type of color works for you. I think me and Rob talked about this on my show. And I forget, Rob, you're probably more in tune with this than I am. It was the warm versus the cool colors. And I think they wanted you to lean more towards the warm stuff and like the blues. And is that correct? I can't remember it.
Well, I think, like we're talking about, maybe it just kind of depends. Different people react to different things. Depends on your industry. Or I don't know if we're talking like blue is the most popular color for things like logos and, going back to, I think it's the Levi's blue jeans, Facebook and like the IBM, all those kind of corporate, it's a safe color, strong, whatever, blue. Yeah. And a lot of people use that, but I think it just depends. Again, you just mentioned yellow. A lot of people don't like, but look at something like Live Strong, maybe before the whole, whatever personal Lance Armstrong thing. But they were using yellow. To me, I see a lot of like fitness type, whatever athletic folks using yellow. It just seems to be, it has like energy. So again, I think it depends on your industry and what you're trying to do. We're talking about like a call to action button. Obviously, that color of that button might be, if it's different than everything else on your site, that's going to stand out. I know, Ben, you were just on with Vincent. I caught the tail end of that, and you talked about contrast. Maybe it's not a particular color that's best, but you're talking about like I think contrast and font sizes, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah,
I think one thing that you should definitely remember is before you start your business, get in there and see what colors are best, what colors people respond most to as a generalization, and then stick with that color, and you don't be switching back and forth. Once you get it, stay with it. I think that's the most important key with the color thing. It's more of a consistency deal.
My younger brother, Sebastian, he's I think he's getting his doctorate in May in physics. If I'm wrong, he's gonna hate me for hearing this. But I only say that because he has access to, I think, some medical journals and studies that, or at least I don't know how to search those. And I think, Wade, that you've done a blog post about color, and I think you surfaced a lot of the same research that my brother was able to send to me. And a lot of that research, it sounded like it was around one specific color, which was red. And I found that interesting that there wasn't a lot of studies that were about other colors other than red, and some studies about blue. And in the stuff that my brother sent me, and I think that you referenced it in your blog post, it was saying that red wasn't how did it put it? Maybe Wade, you can remember, since I think you wrote about it, but like the negative effects of red, and that like some people were moving away from it. And I think they did some cognitive tests with the color red, and people performed lower or poorer.
Yeah,
with
one
the
of
color
the
red.
interesting things about the color red is if it's, I know McDonald's uses this, and different widely known brands may use the color red. But one thing about it, if your brand color is red, then it's like it's a turnoff. But HubSpot did a study on a call to action buttons, a red versus a green, which is basically, what do you think of when you think of red and green? You think of stop and go. And the red button outperformed the green button by 23%. And so I think when it comes, on a basis of the call to action, it's all right to put the red in there because it lets people know, hey, this is me. This is where I'm at. It stands out.
Yeah. I thought the studies were, or at least the results were interesting. I don't know enough about the field to really decipher the studies to then be able to say, oh, well, maybe they didn't think about this, or this is the context of the study. Just like Rob was saying that contrast is a variable that probably plays a pretty significant role, probably in that HubSpot study where, the AB with the green and the red, potentially the red, which is a slightly darker color than the green they probably used, with white text inside the button, created more of a contrast between those two elements, and thus became a visual focal point on the page. And that's why people saw it and then interacted with it, versus it really being about red and green. It was probably more about contrast. Now, that's just assumption on my part, but I'm just pointing out that there are a lot of variables to the question of what is the best color for certain elements or for a brand per se.
This brings me to a good point about this. MIT did a cognitive research study about color back in 2002 or something like that. And they said, I can't recall a lot of it, but they said basically the end result was, if you had a product, and people wanted that product, like 40-60% of them didn't care what color the buttons were. They didn't care what color your website was. There was going to buy it if they wanted that. And that's where you want to get your marketing to. So you want to get somebody that's going to blow right past your colors, going to blow right past your manipulation, as and they've seen what you have, they want what you have, and go right past that and hit that call to action button. And one thing that I'm studying right now, I'm actually researching it for an article on the blog. It's called the psychology of FOMO, and it's you guys have all heard of hashtag FOMO, the fear of missing out, and that is a huge psychological trigger within people, because they'll want what you have. If you have something that somebody's afraid of missing out on, and it's a good thing, can help them, then you're going to create the FOMO reaction within people. And that's when they can blow by all those colors and all that other stuff. As far as psychologically, is when you can create a mantra around your product or around your business that just makes people go in. There was an experiment done, I can't remember when, but it was called the cookie jar experiment. And the professor had a full jar of 10 cookies in one jar. And in the other jar, he had only 2 cookies in this jar. And he allowed his class to pick, if you could have one of these 2, which one would you rather have? And 77% of those people chose the jar with the 2 cookies. And it's because they thought that those cookies, the 2 cookies, were provided more value to them in some way, or it was connected to a prize in some sort. So instead, there was fear of missing something from, making a wrong decision. And Jeff Walker, have you guys ever read that book Launch from Jeff Walker?
I think
This
so.
guy.
Yeah.
I mean, if you haven't read Launch, go get Launch. It is an awesome book. It's Jeff Walker. He is one of the best guys I've ever read for creating that FOMO, that fear of missing out on his products. And one thing that I read, it was a Facebook post, and he said, "Is your marketing not getting you anywhere?" And that was the question: is your marketing not getting you anywhere? Of course, he had the image and the picture; everything was good, but then he said, I'm about to show you how to, capitalize, 300% on your marketing by next week. And, who out there would stand and say, no, my marketing's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of reminds me of Quick Sprout with Neil Patel, how he says the pop-up comes up and he says, would you like more traffic? And one of the buttons is, no, I don't want more traffic.
Right.
And then the other button is, yes, I want it. So it's more of the fear of missing out deal, So make a product that people want to have, and make a product that people are scared to, pass up on the opportunity. That's one of the things that Robert Cialdini wrote about in his book. It talks about the scarcity principles, and the principles of psychology. The scarcity was one of them, and the FOMO, fear of missing out, actually resides inside of the scarcity heuristic. So creating a product or creating a webinar where you only have 10 people can get in, or you're only going to have 5 of these products, and it makes people want it. And now there's a lot of things that you have to do in the past, or up to this point. There's a lot of products that you have to, a lot of things you have to do. Excuse me. One of those things is to be consistent with your readership, your viewers. Be helpful, be informative, be just be that person that people need you to be. Mm-hmm. And then once you build that foundation, then you can start bringing out these products, and people says, oh, well, there's Ben. And I know Ben does an awesome job on visuals, and he does this. He's doing a webinar. Only 3 people can get in about visual. I'm there, And so it kind of, there's a lot of things that go with the fear of missing out, but it's a good thing to try.
There's a lot of stuff going. I mean, you just put down a bunch of great stuff and it all kind of goes together. I'm trying to go back. We missed a couple of questions, and we're talking about the cookies, I think. Yeah, the one with the 2, you can take this jar that's full and you think I'll get a lot of cookies, but it goes, I think that's the whole quality, right, versus quantity. Maybe these are much better cookies. I'll just take 2 because there's not many left. So obviously those are the better ones because everyone's been eating them. So there's that going on. And talking about, you want to get to the point where you're passing by stuff like colors and fonts and, you're just known. That reminded me of that quote or whatever, whoever said it, that it's like hustle until you don't have to introduce yourself. I'm sure you guys have seen that. I pass around. So I think all good stuff. And I think it all kind of can work together. Before we get off color completely, I'll go back and say, I use orange everywhere. And a lot of people kind of comment on that. I'm not some whatever internet superstar. Like you said, there's only a couple people that do graphics better than Ben and me. I want to know who those are because we're going after them. But I'm just being whatever, coming into.
Well, I didn't want to blow your head up till it popped.
Yeah, right.
There's got to be somebody better.
But a lot of people, just because I'm using orange, it works for me because, again, some psychology studies say that orange is creative, and there's a few tie-ins that work. That hey, I'm a designer, but also it's bright. But a lot of people I know don't love orange, and it's kind of like they're adverse to it. So again, it goes back to everybody might see it differently, but I use it so much that and mostly just that color that a lot of people they think orange. I got a few comments of like, oh, you're that guy that uses orange or whatever, or they'll send me stuff like if it's not an avocado then it's something to do with orange, right? So I'm not to that point yet where I'm known everywhere that I don't have to introduce myself. So things like orange or a certain font, certain color, I'll let that work for me.
Yeah, well, let me back up. Since we were talking, and all you got to be is consistent, Rob. You've got the tools and everything to get you where you need to go. But one of the things, and I just remembered this, the fear of missing out, the psychology of all that, and there was a guy that I'm not going to say his name, but I met him at Social Media Marketing World in San Diego. And the dude told me he had to sell a couple of things to get to this event. And for those of you that's never been to Social Media Marketing World, it's you have to be there. That's the social media event in the country, in my opinion. And that they do such a great job at starting early, 6 months in advance, 7 months in advance, and just pounding you and showing you videos of what happened last year. And that starts, oh man, I got to be there. Look at all these people. Look at what they're doing, and look at who I could be. And so if you can take your product or take your business and create that emotion that is involved with the fear of being left out. People hate to be left out, and just wrap that around the product. Hey, Ross.
I muted myself. What's up?
Not much, buddy.
That's for Jen, although it's water. It's not vodka. What?
Prove it.
How was the conversation going? Saw you guys in here talking it up. Social psychology. What up?
Oh, hey, there's Jed. Hey, Jed, record.
So I missed the beginning. Are we just talking colors, or what are we? Colors.
Yeah, so this is really Wade's area of expertise, definitely not Rob and I's, although we understand a little bit on the visual side, right? The colors and visuals and how we can affect our audiences, what they see and what they see first, and maybe how they feel by looking at it. But taking that one step further and on a larger scale is what Wade does, and he was talking about triggers, both words and formatting, and fear of missing out and heuristics and stuff like that. So he's schooling us.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a neuro marketing and neuroscience and social science geek, so all that plays in. I was just reading a post yesterday about pupil size. It was kind of interesting because they took these these two pictures, and one had you couldn't tell the change, but they just changed the pupil size slightly, and it got like 30% more conversions. And so that kind of stuff, like, because it's all about ratios, and I don't know if they were getting into like the golden mean or anything like that, but the thing is that all this stuff matters and it plays out. And one of the points that I brought up was that most people, they're only first draft marketing, really. You know what I'm saying? It's like they're so busy with the flow of stuff that they're putting out their stuff, and before they're ever going to actually take that and A/B test it and add another layer or check and say, wow, when I change the font, what's it do? When I change the title, when I change, anything about it, the colors, how do people react? The data is moving so fast, right? They're just jumping into the river and they're like trying to hold on to a branch, that they're busy already working on the next piece of content instead of going back and saying, wait, have I learned anything from the last piece of content? Have I optimized it? Have I got any data, going back to cross-reference my audience and my content? Most people aren't. And that's the thing. And I don't know that will change. So it's a small sliver of a space for geeks who like to geek out on that, because I think that, everyone's so busy worrying that they're missing the next thing in order to look back at what happened.
I can totally understand what you're talking about. We were talking about that missing out and stuff. On the other side of that coin, you can do the exact opposite and start to include people. Make your followers part of your business. Make your blog readers part of what you're doing, and people respond to this. Like I said, people want to be included, and it's kind of like a social contagion. We feel, it's an emotional state of being, and one of the best ways that's demonstrated in this way is, just allow people to be a part of what you're doing. And Blab is the perfect example of all this. Allow people to come in, allow people to ask questions, and it makes brand ambassadors. Over time, you keep doing it.
Yeah, I think that's key, and they're a source. They're the other side. It's so ridiculous to me that we still have to include the customer in a business, or we have to include our audience in the conversation about the content we're sharing, or whatnot. I think that goes back to society in that sense that, and it goes back to what I was just saying too, is that everybody's so busy, looking out, and we don't look in, whether it's our own content, how many people are doing social without a strategy, whether it's, or just not optimizing things, or in the same way, they're looking out at the new user or the new customer instead of, hey, what about the audience you already have? Are you doing anything for them? When you're talking about, customers, business, everybody has the same problem. And it pretty much spans across all these things. And I think that's something, the smart people now are starting to look at that and say, wait a minute, is that integrated into my strategy? Is my audience integrated into my strategy? Is my font integrated into my strategy? And the audience, everything.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that you have to, remember to keep it all together. But once you consistently do this, it becomes second nature. Just like another thing that I believe every good marketer should try is to learn how to recognize what they call cognitive dissonance. And basically, a cognitive dissonance is when you hold two conflicting ideas in your head. And so I've seen, again, I'm going to go to Jeff Walker. He's one of the best guys to do this at all. And he'll ask a question, are you doing this wrong? And you'll think to yourself, well, no, I'm a marketer. I don't make mistakes in marketing, but, I better check and see, what he's saying about this. And so it's providing a promise and then making good on that promise. You get them to start asking questions in their head. And it's more of a conversation that you start before the conversation you start with them, before this happens or the blab happens.
Yeah, I agree.
Linked video, we're talking about maybe in general, just video, popularity of that is a good way to do that, right? You're just, before you're trying to sell something, you're out there talking and, hey, here I am. And you see me, like we're talking to each other. And Ross just said right earlier before he jumped in, or was this, I don't know if you're joking. You said, is that what you sound like, Wade? So you've got the voice thing going on, the visuals. And earlier, Jay, I'm trying to scroll back, Sassy Savvy VA said, how much of your branding should reflect your personality in comparison to the psychology of your audience? If I got that right.
Say it again.
I think I saw that. I believe that if just like for WadeHarman.com, I'm a pretty laid back guy, and I feel like the site is kind of laid back as well. And I think that if you're running a personal blog, then sure, go for it. I'm also working on another business blog that's going to come out hopefully the first of next month, and it's not going to show any of that. It's more of the business oriented stuff. So I think there's a difference between the personal and then the business brand. But I think they they're symbiotic. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah, I think it depends also on your goals, because how much do you line up with your brand? I mean, if you breathe your brand, then integrate the heck out of it, because you're going to get some advantages of that in personalizing it and humanizing it. But if it's not, and you're just in there like, hey, it's me, and then, hey, I do something totally that, everything that I'm about doesn't necessarily add value to it. I think it's like anything else. If you're looking at a page or a blog and you're saying, do you hold all of the elements accountable? Is that picture worth being in there? Could it stand by its own? What did it do? What about the text that you're using? Are you adding any value, or are you just taking people, on a ride to something? I think everything can be kind of broken down and analyzed that way. And you know what? It's just like being funny. It's like a video marketing, right? Not everybody can go on there and be funny. And sometimes they go, oh, I like this guy, he's funny. And then they're going to come on and try and be funny. And it's like, oh, that was horrible. Don't ever do that again. So it's like, it's got to be good, right? I mean, you've got to be able to deliver that, and then it's got to line up with your brand goals. And
that percentage is going to be different per person and per their audience, right? Because their audience is going to be different from the next person, and you personally are very different and unique. So that percentage of how much is it your audience, does it represent your audience versus how much does it represent you is totally variable. So there's not going to be a percentage we can give you. What I would suggest, just for actionable sake, is to start with what reflects your audience, and then start evolving that to what matches you or where you feel comfortable with. And then where you start to feel comfortable is where you stop. Because I think what we're saying is if it doesn't represent you enough, you're going to have a hard time portraying that, even though it represents your audience and they, they love it. So you do need to find some balance there. So what I would suggest is start with the audience, make it look just like your audience, whatever they'd react to, and then slowly change it to where you start to feel comfortable. And then that's where you stop. That's that percentage for you.
Yeah, it definitely isn't a one size fits all. And I think that, every business is even different. Like some people are like, oh, everybody needs to do this, or this is how you do Twitter. It depends. People would love to simplify things down to just have an answer. And let me get that guide, that ebook of 5 things to do to, explode my Twitter growth or whatever. But it's like, there's definitely some things that are smart and smarter to do to get certain effects. But it's just like saying what paint is good to make a great piece of art. What color should I use? Well, it depends. What are you painting? What is it that you're making? Because that, it's all different, and how you use it is going to be differently. A lot of people, they always ask me, oh, what tools are you using? It's like, well, I may not pull out I'm using Zerobi, and, because you're not using that, everything would change had you done that. And it's like, no, I'm probably using the same tools people are. I may use them differently. And so that's where, like, I ask very specific questions when I'm talking with somebody who's like a tools guy or an expert. Like I want to get to the information. Like a great example for everybody is that ask the question which takes you beyond what you could find on your own. You're going to go up to Michael Jordan and you're going to say, hey, how many points do you get when you get a basket? No, that would be a total waste of your time with him. It's like, what can you learn from him or her that is different than what you could find out there? And that's the stuff that I ask for, is like, if I'm talking to someone, it's like, oh, great. How do you use that most people wouldn't understand how to use? Like, that's a better question, because it's like, oh, okay, great. He's going to show me, well, actually I combo this up with that. And, I get this new effect. Those are the things. Everything else you could just Google and figure it out yourself, really.
Is that silence where we all start looking at the comments and we start scanning for questions?
I always say the problem is if everybody starts reading the comments, and the people in the comments are like, hey, what happened to them? Did they freeze up?
All right. No, that's great, Ross. I really appreciate you jumping in and chatting a little bit about
I see a question from Kristen. She didn't do the little question thing, but I see it. She says, what's the difference between cognitive dissonance and dichotomous thinking? I think the difference between that is the dichotomous thinking is just basically all or none. I either am or I'm not type of deal. And with cognitive dissonance, it's more of a question myself. Can I really do this type thing? And so that I've not really studied the dichotomous thinking for what we're doing here, but I would say that the cognitive dissonance approach is a little more proactive than the other, because either you are or you're not with people.
Awesome. So, Wade, where would be a good place for somebody to start if they wanted to start? If they're listening to this blab or the replay and they say, this is something that I haven't considered in my materials in the past, whether it's color and visuals or the trigger words or some of the other stuff we've talked about, where is a good place for them to start, do you think? What are some tips or action items that they could take, thinking about, let's say, a blog post, just to give you some context?
I would say you can go to the blog, wadeharman.com/blog. There's a couple of things in there. The emotional connection with your readers is a good one. And then the color psychology is also a good one to kind of start you out on. Rob's got a good one on that. You can also go to wade.tips/SMPSYCHE, SM Psych. And that will get you on the email list. I send about 2 a month. And or actually it's what I'm trying to do, send out about 2 a month for social media psychology tips. And that also puts you in a notification for the Social Brain podcast, which is coming out on iTunes in November. So you can listen to that. And you all get to hear this sexy voice.
All right, and the new haircut. Oh, well, that's not listening. That's seeing.
Oh, man, don't even talk about the haircut, dude.
All right, look at that. For those of us that are just listening in, you can imagine. Nice.
I don't like it.
It'll grow.
Yeah,
I'll put this in there.
another good resource that I've enjoyed too is Roger Dooley. If you guys follow him, he does Brainfluence has just tons of little tidbits. It's kind of like Purple Cow, but for neuroscience. It's just all these little kind of unconnected factoids of things, but it's a great primer in a way if you want to kind of get an understanding about what, you know, this kind of stuff can do to your, you know, in just looking at it. And then when you blend, whether it's social psychology or neuromarketing over with like big data or just analytics, that's when it gets really interesting. And of course, that's where everything's going to go, on more of a kind of a platform based, you know, it's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes that people don't see on a lot of these platforms that they're working with, which is really kind of, in my opinion, rudimentary right now, but eventually it'll be a lot smarter.
I've got to fix that, Alex. Sorry. I'm not a tech guy. I would also...
Thank you 404 times.
Yeah.
That's wow, gracious.
I would also
there.
recommend Robert Cialdini's book. It's on Amazon. It is called The Psychology of Persuasion.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good book. It's Kindle is $11. Well, paperback's less. So
yeah, just the idea of reciprocation from that and talking about that, that's a piece I actually built a lot of my social strategy on. And I did, you know, I geek out and I test stuff, and oh my goodness, you know, it's real. The things are real. And I use that with my clients, even when I'm helping them design a web page or a sales page. I'm like, look, there's no people on here. Oh, you know, if there's a picture of a smiling girl there, your sign up rates are going to go up. Like, it's, the struggle is real. The data, the strategy is real. You know, it'll impact that. And a lot of people just don't understand what's either helping them or hindering them on their design and the flow of what they're doing, whether it's content or say, especially for sales or conversion. Like, it really matters. And so, you know, it's a good way to just start to see and be aware of these things, because you go, oh, wow, just changing that, all of a sudden, you know, changes what I'm doing. And what about all the work goes into, oh, wait, this is smart, this is good content, or, oh, I built this whole site. And it's like 90% of the work is there. And then if you don't take the time to actually go and fine tune it, then that was a lot of work for a very little. Like, success is almost always like right next to failure. You know, I mean, it's like people go, oh yeah, I'm doing that. And it's like, oh, well, no, if you're doing it, but if you do it like this, all of a sudden you get all the results. If you do it just kind of close, you get none of the results, but you feel like you've done it. And that was a total kind of waste. So,
Alex I think he's went to the wrong thing. That SM Psych is, I think you might have put a small S. I don't know if that makes a difference, but that should take you. Yeah, but what this will take you to is the Social Brain landing page, and it puts you in the social media psychology list as well. So sorry about that.
All right, wait. So you mentioned your blog, and where people can join the list and learn a lot more about this and follow you in your new podcast. Is the website the best place for people to reach you? Is there a better place? Are you active on other platforms?
Yeah, I'm active on Twitter and on Google Plus at Wade Harman or plus Wade Harman. And yep, Rob's got it. Wade Harman on Google Plus. I'm not on Facebook that much. Let's see. Pretty much, you know, Pinterest. I do Pinterest, everything. So
perfect. And something we like to ask all of our guests towards the end of the show is, who do you think we should invite to be a guest next time?
Okay, I got a good one. Kristen is just reminding me of something. She says we can find you on Neil's site too. Actually, I have so many irons in the fire, Kristen. I don't write for Neil Schaefer anymore, but I write for Convince and Convert, Social Media Examiner, and Mark Schaefer, which Business Grow. So you can. I've got a good one on Business Grow right now. It's how to impact your content using psychology. And I would say, who would I like to see on this show? You know, I'd like to see Martin Shervington. I really like that guy. Martin Shervington would be a good one, and he's into psychology a lot too.
Okay, well, we'll pass that on. That you need to see him on there.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Wade. I'm going to turn off the recording, and if you're able to, just keep sticking around, and we can keep chatting about this stuff. And